Good morning. How are you? I'm good. I'm glad to be here and I thank you for watching. We are back with another ID Channel's Evil Lives Here. This is Season 2, Episode 5, Son of a Prophet. So, I had to chuckle. I mean, come on. You know, if you've been watching me, where my mind went when I saw Son of a Prophet. I just wanted to shake my head and bang it against the wall because I automatically thought of cults. And, you know, how many have we had? 3, 4 maybe episodes of cults already? So I start to think I'm becoming a little obsessed with cults. Maybe I should do a little side series on cults alone. And then I'm like, do I really want to get that involved? But then, yeah, there's so many interesting things. Anyways, we are back to this. This is, again, called Son of the Prophet. And I will keep you updated if I do a side series, maybe a get ready with me, and we discuss different cults each week. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Is that something you'd like to hear? It's just come up so much recently that I'm kind of, I'm intrigued. There's just so much that we could talk about each week. I could do a different cult and, you know, I'm not sure. Anyways, back to this story. This episode was originally aired on February 13th, 2017. Okay, so I want to give a trigger warning. There is abuse. This, of course, has religious aspects. And I just want to personally say this was the hardest episode that I have done to date. I've seen one other episode that was very difficult for me, but we haven't discussed it. Actually, I did. When I first got into doing this, I was doing a get ready with me, and as we were chatting, I started talking about the new episode I had just watched. So it is a newer one that just came up, and it literally broke my heart. I couldn't get it out of my mind. We discussed it. So I'm in season 2. This was probably season 10 or 11, so it'll be a hot minute before we get there. But just wanted to reference that this was a very, very difficult episode for me to get through. And if it's going to trigger you, please go ahead and exit out of here. I don't know if there's any easy way to put any of this story, especially when we get further into it. So, and I will do a reminder when we get closer to that spot, which will be a little bit into the story. So when we get close to the spot, I will give you a shout and let you know that we've hit that spot to go ahead and back out if you need to. So we're going to get started, and this episode starts with a man. He's sitting and talking to the camera, as always. Production's involved. They're usually handing them something or anything, right? And he is the narrator of the episode. So he starts by saying, and I quote, "It's been 19 years since I got out of prison, and by some miracle, I got a second chance at life," end quote. So this story, we know this guy is heavily involved, and yeah, I'll leave it at that because I have really mixed feelings on this guy, and we'll talk about as we go. So obviously they do this. They say things like this to grab you, get your attention, hold you tight, and get going, and they've done that. You know, we are immediately engrossed. We know this guy's involved. We know he's been in prison for whatever crimes it is. Talking about a prophet, we have a really good idea that it's a cult, and we're still waiting to hear the details. So there's only been one other episode that I can remember that we've discussed that the narrator has been in prison and served time for his part in the horrific events that we're going to discuss. So it's not often that we have this side of the story, right? So he is saying that a lot of people that know him don't know the depth of what happened. So they know who he is. They know he's been in prison for it. They don't know the finite details. And then we get this little pop-up thing, and I like to say, evil live here lives here tells us. So when I say that, that means it's popped up on the screen. But his name, it tells us that Dennis Ryan spent almost 12 years in prison because of what happened. No, because of what he helped his father do in April 29th, 1985. So now we have a few things. We know the guy's name's Dennis. We know his father's involved, and we know it was 1985. Let's start, right? We don't always get that kind of good information to begin with. So then we go and we get video, actual news coverage. And I actually like when they do it, you see these things, and it's weird when you're seeing it because you're looking at it through the eyes of the camera from in the 1980s usually. And it's just so different from now, or than it is now. So we get to hear the commentators talking too, and they're always, it's weird because it's so matter of fact back then. There's not a lot of, what am I trying to say, politically correct, where you're not trying to upset people. You're saying it as it is or how they see it, right? And they're saying that ordinary, normal farmers become immersed in extraordinary evil. And that's how it starts. So I'm going to get started here as we talk about the story. And I didn't do a really good job of memorizing this. It's been a minute since I've watched the video. Normally I try to watch the episode, take my notes, and do it immediately where it's fresh in my mind. I don't have to rely on my notes as much. This isn't the case. I've been trying to now watch a couple episodes at a time and do the notes because that's the longest part of this. Doing the makeup's easy. It's taking the notes, doing my research, and talking about it that takes the longest. So I've been trying to get a couple episodes in at a time, and mostly that's because it's summer and I don't want to be inside stuck, you know, inside where I could be outside enjoying this beautiful weather. But I enjoy doing this, so I want to watch this. I want to do that. But yeah, so we're trying to do a couple episodes at a time. Part of this will come back as we go, but otherwise, please forgive me for taking my notes and going with that. I do have visitors. I've got dogs in the house. Bowie just came in. My two girls are outside, the other Corgi and other Pyrenees, so I'm hoping they behave themselves and I don't have a lot of barking going on. That could very well be a wishful thinking, right? As I said. So anyways, we're going to get to the story, and I'll shut this door if I have to and lock them out. Not that it'll really stop their barking, but we'll do what we have to do. So we get in here, and Dennis starts by saying, you know, he can't take back what he's done. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, sorry about that. I'm sure it'll happen a couple more times because he likes to go in and then he likes to go out. And we go in and go out. Okay, so Dennis says he can't change what he's done. He just has to learn to live with it. Well, okay, right? I mean, what do you say to that? It's the truth. You've done it. You live with it. You have to own it, right? And now we see a picture of Dennis and his father. And Dennis says that his dad just went off the deep end and took him with him. Yeah, I mean, we'll find out how young Dennis was when this started, but that's very reasonable to, at a young age, say that yes, Dad probably took him with him. It's just when you get older that you struggle with it. So, anyways. He's now looking at a picture of the family, and he says that he looked up to his father and thought his dad walked on water. He says, and I don't understand this, but he says he understands why his mom didn't try to get away, but he didn't understand why his dad raised him the way he did. So, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it as the mom should have tried to get away and take the kids with them and didn't. I have trouble sometimes. I'm thinking about just doing a video where I talk and don't do makeup because I get distracted and one or the other take my eyes off. I might do the next video that way. We'll see. Okay, so we're again seeing pictures of Dennis and his family. And he's showing pictures of him in 3rd grade playing baseball. He said him and his dad spent a lot of time throwing ball, or, you know, tossing ball. And his father wanted him to be a starting catcher. So Dennis says it was, you know, it's what his dad wanted. That's what he wanted. And he said it was a special summer of him and his dad working to achieve that goal. So his dad expected this of him, and Dennis did everything he could to make it happen because that's what his daddy wanted. So then Dennis tells us a story of, one night that his mom and dad were going out and leaving him and his brother and sister alone for the first time. So we see that there is Dennis. He's got a brother and a sister. And his dad tells him he is in charge. So Dennis is the oldest and needs to protect them if someone comes into the house, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but I don't know how old this kid is. Further into the story, if his dad had said this, it would make more sense. But at this point, it didn't make a lot of sense. And I'm wondering if the evil lives here didn't just kind of switch back and forth and do kind of what they typically do. They like to throw teasers out, I guess is a good way to say it, and hook you in and then go back to the beginning. And if that's the case, I would see that. I could see that here. So anyways, he tells Dennis that he's in charge. He has to protect his brothers and sisters, or brother and sister, in case someone broke into the house. And then his dad gives him a knife. And it showed a big knife. Again, reenactment is not always 100% accurate, but it showed a really big knife. Shows him how to use it and how to cut someone's throat if needed. And that was how he was expected to protect the house and his brother and sister. Okay, that's a little extreme. And like I said, I almost expect that further into the story when, you know, like I said, we know this is a cult. So when that's going on. But right now, the cult is not supposed to be a thing. So it, to me, just shows that his dad is just highly paranoid and, I don't know if I want to say delusional, but highly paranoid and kind of rubbing that off on Dennis, which we get the, you know, you learn later on that that's exactly what he did. He really influenced Dennis. But I won't jump ahead and get too ahead of ourselves because there's a whole story here. So Dennis said that when his dad was around other people, he was the nicest man you can find. You know, just wonderful. Would always do something for somebody. Would always help somebody, whatever. But Dennis said when it was just him, he was a madman. And nobody wanted to make his dad mad because he had a violent temper. Now, it takes a little bit for me to get Dad's name, which kind of bothered me. I'd like to know his name, but so a lot of the story I'm going to say his dad, and that's why, because I don't know his name yet till towards the end of the story or middle. I can't even remember. I found out, or we learn it, but it's not for a while. And so his dad had a violent temper. He didn't hesitate to smack or hit the kids and knock them on their ass if he felt they needed it. He would even hit them with his fist or kick them if he had them down. Dennis said that all the times he was hit or he watched his mom be hit, he never blamed his dad. Again, remember, he hero worships his dad. So he says that he thought he must not have been good enough or done something to upset his dad and he deserved it. Or the same with his mom. His mom had to have done something to deserve being hit and punched by their dad. I'll tell you, I find that very difficult, but I'm also not in this person's space. I don't know how old he was when all this started, if it was something that I have a feeling it was something he grew up with, but it's just very heartbreaking to me that that was the justification. He thought he deserved it. And I hear this a lot in these episodes that we watch. And I just watched another one yesterday, taking notes. And you hear that. The abuse victim is saying they thought they deserved it. And that just goes and shows the manipulation that this person does. And the younger you start it, the more they believe it. So, yeah, like I said, I don't want to judge. I don't want to assume anything because I know that there's a whole lot more to this story. But it's just very sad to me that that is their way of thinking, right? Anyways, so Dennis now tells us a little bit about his father, and his father was a truck driver. These poor truck drivers. I mean, I've heard my fair share of truck driver stories, and like I said, my stepfather is a truck driver, and it's just not every truck driver is homicidal or mental. It is a stigma that they get. But anyways, okay, so he tells us that the first time that, you know, his dad really came off the road, and he came home, he was all pumped up and excited, and he said, and I quote, okay, hold on. His dad comes home, he's all pumped up and excited, and he's sitting down with his wife, and he's telling her, and I quote, he had met some radical anti-government religious type people, end quote. And, I mean, his dad was all in. He'd already, to cliche it, drank the Kool-Aid. But he starts playing this tape for his wife, and I believe Dennis was there as well. I'm going to pretty much assume Dennis was there. And I can't even tell you the crap that was on this. I won't even repeat the crap that we're hearing from this recorder. But I will mention that they talk about Yahweh. So it's Yahweh's people is what they believe. I never heard of this. I never heard of Yahweh. But I'll tell you a little fun thing about that. I've never heard of him. I've never heard of the group. And his dad was all bought in, and his dad's telling the family that this is their new religion. This is what they now believed. And they had to believe in it. He was now a follower of Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament. So, as I said, I'm clueless about this. Just never even heard of it. I've been raised in church my whole life, and I never heard about it. Now, that could just seriously be my ability to completely ignore things that doesn't interest me, and a cult-like type of thing would be one of those. Or at the time, growing up. Now I'm like really interested in it. That's why I'm talking about doing that series. I digress. So, my trusty daughter, who you all have heard, she's actually very intelligent. I know you've heard me say this. But she's coming in and starts telling me that Yahweh is the name for the God of the Israelites in the Old Testament. Now, I was raised in church, and I didn't really force religion on my kids. So you ask, I didn't ask. I know this. So you might ask, how does she know this? Well, she went to a Christian college. I think I mentioned that before when we talked about another cult, and she knew something else that I had never heard of. So yeah, she went to a Christian college, and in their Old Testament, New Testament studies, she learned this. So, all right, I had no idea. But I just wanted to clarify, she's not a religious nut. She doesn't study cults or religion of any kind. She's a numbers person. But she did go to college, and she did go to college at a Christian school and knew who Yahweh was immediately. So, now, getting back to the story, they are now a family family believer of Yahweh. It didn't really matter if you didn't want to be. Daddy said you were, so now we were Yahweh people. And if you didn't believe in Yahweh, according to Daddy, you were evil. And Dad, again, I hate that I don't know his name, but Dad believed that Armageddon was coming. And his father started preaching that this new religion, he started preaching this new religion to his family. And I really could get into the crazy beliefs of what he's preaching and stuff, and we will touch base of it, but I don't even feel like I should acknowledge a lot of what they believe because it was so bad, just so bad. So we won't. I will just tell you that we'll get into it, but for right now, I'm staying pretty clear of the whole thing. So he believed, and this is one part, he believed that the problems of the world were with the Jews and the bankers and other racist beliefs. It's a very radical group, and had a belief that if you were non-white, you were the problem. So that should tell you just really how awful it is. So he was raising Dennis to believe this, and he was raising him to be a warrior for Yahweh. Dennis says he didn't understand any of it, but his father had told him if they wanted to eat at his table and live under his roof, you were going to believe what he tells you that to believe. And Dennis says, what was he supposed to do? He idolized his dad. Of course he was going to believe whatever Daddy told me. So he did. So Dennis is telling us how his father said that he could talk directly to God. Dennis says, and I quote, "It was just so insane," end quote. And I'm glad he can realize that, even though it was probably after many years in prison and getting away from his father that he realized it was insane. But, hey, he now says it was insane. So that is really a good thing. Sorry, I'm getting stuck. And I mean, I agree it's insane. I don't think there's anything about this that's not insane. So, yeah. What is it? After hearing about how they talked to Yahweh, it's very insane. And they talked to Yahweh with what they call a arm test. Guys, I will get into this a little bit later towards the end. I'll talk about this arm test. But and the reason I don't now is because when I was watching it, I was just so blown away that I didn't take the time to really understand what it was and how they talked to Yahweh and that kind of stuff until the end when I was really able to look into it. But needless to say, because of this arm test, they believed that they were the chosen people and that Yahweh was talking to them. And Dennis said he never questioned it. He said he's ashamed of it now, again, all these years later. But he never questioned it once. He always believed what his father said was the truth. Okay. So his father started to, as any good cult does, amass followers. So his dad started getting followers, and they believed he was the voice of God, or the voice for Yahweh. And they would go to Dennis's house and sit around and talk about the Bible and Armageddon. And Dennis says there was always, oh, hello, I'm falling down. Okay, sorry about that. I had my stuff falling everywhere. I had to rearrange papers were flying everywhere, dogs were barking, so I had to take a quick break. And I'm back. I'm set up. My notes are now over here, so please forgive me if I'm not talking directly to you. I'm doing this in my makeup, but I'll fix this for the next time and get it set up. So for now, let's just go on. And I'm not sure where I left off. My notes, I'll just pick up back here where it says, Dennis says his father became the voice of God for Yahweh, and that his followers would meet at, and I know I said this, so I'm repeating it. They would meet at their house for Bible study and Armageddon discussion with their father. Dennis said that people started just staying together. So they were coming and staying. And they all became like one close-knit family. I find that very just kind of, I don't like that. Because it's, you know, I don't mind the close-knit family part. I don't like it because it's, they're doing it over a cult, I guess is the best way to say that. I don't know. But people were always coming over, staying. They became one close-knit family. And I never got the idea, or they never said, but I wondered, just like any cult, if they all lived in the same compound, as you know, they call them. I don't know for sure. But this family took the religious belief and became an obsession for all of them. And I poked myself in my eye and it's kind of bothering me. It went so far as Dennis's father even pulled him out of school, and they started having to go to school, homeschooling, right? And a lot of other kids did too. So it wasn't just Dennis's father, but the group of them did. And Dennis says that everyone in that group, Dennis says that everything that the group did, from eating to what they were going to, from eating to what they were going to do that day, had to be approved by Yahweh. So I really said that funky, so let me just clarify. Everything they did, their schedule, had to be approved by Yahweh. So they would do this arm test and ask Yahweh if they could do this for the day, or if they could eat, you know, whatever they were wanting to eat. And Yahweh had to approve. And they did the arm test, which, when I get into it, you'll understand. The arm test gives them yes or no answers from Yahweh. So if Yahweh said yes, they could eat whatever they had planned to eat, then they could eat. If he said no, they had to find something that Yahweh approved of. Does it sound just bonkers? Because it is. It's just, and when I tell you more about this arm test, you're going to be like shaking your head like I was. So anyways, and then everything that they did was in preparation for the end of the world. Or the end of the world as they knew it, right? And a lot of what, and this will shock nobody, but a lot of what Dennis's father and their group did was illegal. Color me shocked, right? I mean, who would have thought that they were going to do anything illegal? I mean, but yeah. So they were stealing from, I guess, it doesn't say whoever, I guess just non-Yahweh believers, but they were stealing whatever they wanted and saying that it belonged to Satan's people and they didn't have any right to it. And in their eyes, it wasn't a crime because it was against the laws of man, and they followed Yahweh's laws. Right? Okay. Are we on this together? I'm just going to say. These cult stories just get me every time. Okay, so again, I don't know Dennis's father's name, so we're still calling him Dennis's father. Thought he was above man's law and had the right to do whatever he wanted. So, in the tradition of cults making up their own rules and laws or following whatever of the Bible they think is important, they take out snippets or whatever. Dennis's father does something else. One of the followers had a sister that he had started bringing to these meetings with him. And Dennis's father fell head over heels in love with her. But he is married, right? Right. So, Cheryl was this lady's name. And eventually, Cheryl and the dad married. So now, Daddy Dearest had 2 wives. And then, to make it even more awkward, because, it's not good enough just to have 1 wife and have 2, now you're going to marry second wife's mom, Maxine. Yeah, I said that. He married his second wife's mom. And if you are disgusted about that, as I was, yeah, that was just, I actually had to read that. I had to rewind that part because, well, just because. Okay. Dennis said that it wasn't abnormal to see his dad with other women because they believed they could have up to 7 wives. Now, this also kind of falls back on the last cult story I did where he had a polygamous group and he had multiple wives and they believed that it was so. Okay. Dennis said that's how it was in the Bible. Again, I was raised in church, but I don't, and again, I wasn't the best Christian. I didn't read my Bible. I just didn't realize you can have multiple wives. And my husband knows that he ain't never getting a second wife. No, not with me. He wants a second wife, he's getting them without me. That's a whole other story. Okay. Sorry. Dennis says his mom didn't like it. And she always got in trouble because she was jealous of the other wives being with her husband. Really? Yeah, I would be too. So then Dennis tells us that his mother actually tried to leave one time and went to her sister's house to stay. And Dennis said it was really weird because when his dad came back and found his wife gone, he wasn't angry. But he called his wife and he sweet-talked her and convinced her to come back home, telling her how much he needed her and he couldn't live without her and just a bunch of bullshit, right? Bullshit that she probably wanted to hear, needed to hear, and hadn't heard him say in a long time or if ever. I mean, it's just whatever. But he convinced her to come back. And Dennis says behind closed doors, and the reenactment actually showed that he witnessed this, but his dad when she got back, he beat her for leaving him. And Dennis said that it was so bad he thought his dad was going to kill his mom. So in the reenactment, it shows young Dennis watching. Again, I don't know age, but the reenactment showed that he was probably teenager. It could have been younger. I don't know. Could have been older. I don't think so. Anyways, so he told her, his dad told her that if she ever left again, he'd hunt her down and kill her. There was no place that she could go and hide from him. He would get and be safe. He would always find her. So, pleasant fella, ain't he? And sorry, this compression suit is showing and it's driving me nuts. Okay. One time, Dennis said his father told him he had to fight for Yahweh. So we're getting to the point now. We're ready. We're getting ready for Armageddon, and he tells Daddy tells Dennis that he has to be ready to fight for his family, for Yahweh, and this is kind of, anyways, it just is. So his father tells Dennis that he has to fight for Yahweh. And Dennis couldn't question this. So, like, he had questions and concerns, but his dad cut him off and told him no questions. He would do what he was told. He would fight for Yahweh. He would take this AR-15 that his dad had handed him and kill whoever he needed to kill and wouldn't feel bad about it. Okay, his dad said that the people who didn't believe like they did were part of Satan and needed to die. And all non-white, unclean people needed to die. That they were the chosen. They were chosen by Yahweh. And there was no independent thinking. They all had to believe the same thing and had to believe what their leader, Dennis's father, told them, because Yahweh was speaking through him and giving them direct commands from Yahweh himself through the daddy. And Dennis said at this point, his dad started bringing out the explosives, machine guns, and other items like that for them to use in their war. It's very disturbing, is it not? I mean, please tell me I'm not the only one that really finds that disturbing. I'm pretty sure I'm not, but you get my point. It's such a radical group, right? And they were not to go anywhere unarmed. So at this point, war is getting ready to happen. They are getting ready for Armageddon. They needed to be prepared. And to be prepared, they had to always be armed. Dennis said that he might not have understood, but his father told him, you know, he would kill who he needed to kill and not feel anything bad about it. His dad told him it was time to man up and be the man that he thought he could be and be the eventual leader of the group, because he is the son. And Dennis said he didn't want his dad mad at him. He adored his father, even now, adored his father, thought his father hung the moon. So he did whatever his dad told him to do. He said his exact words, and I didn't quote this, but I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He said to disappoint his dad would be disappointing the God, Yahweh. So, yeah. I'm just overly sad, right? And especially when pictures come up of a young Dennis with his father, and you can see he dressed like his dad. He tried to emulate his father in every way. And normally I would say that any young kid that adored their father so much as they wanted to be like him would be sweet. Like, you know, if my son, and at times my son did, wanted to become his father, he looked up to him and whatever. And I think that is great. I think that's sweet. Of course, my son's a grown man now, but you get what I'm saying, when he was younger. Because his father is a good man, right? One of the lessons I have is that my husband has taught my son how to be a good man, and my daughter what to expect in a partner. You can't ask for more. And in this case, Dennis did not have that from his father. He looked up to this guy, and this guy was absolute bonko, crazy, just not a good person. But that's who Dennis looked up to. That's what he had to look up to. He didn't have any other options, and he really did think his dad hung the moon. So it's just so sad. So sad. So as Dennis is looking at the pictures, and it shows him and his mom and dad and the two other siblings, which I don't think we ever hear from. Dennis says that he knew his mother wanted to change things. She was unhappy. She wanted things to change, but she couldn't do it. And she had to keep her mouth shut, even though she was miserable. She couldn't even say anything to Dennis because he would betray her to her dad, or to his dad. And so he didn't fault her for staying. And I want to say I can fault her for staying. I think that is a selfish thing to stay because it's the easiest thing. But that's beside me. So that's beside the point. That's just my humble opinion. I'm obviously not there in the situation to give an informed thought about it, but my initial reaction is yes, she should have done something and didn't. Anyways, so now I mentioned before that Dennis would be the next leader of the group, right? But because he is the son, and the father was the leader. The father was Yahweh's chosen, spoken prophet, and so his son was going to be. Now his dad says that since he was the king of Israel, Dennis was now the prince of Israel. I mean, delusions of grandeur. And that Dennis would eventually be the leader. And at that point, he knew he was going to do whatever his daddy wanted, right? And he wouldn't feel bad about it at that point. If he was supposed to kill somebody, he would, and know that it was for the right cause. He had accepted his new role as the Prince of Israel, and he was going to do whatever needed to be done. And I'm just so completely sad for this kid. But at the same time, he is older. I mean, he's still a teenager. He is older. And I understand this is all he's known. I do. I get that. But at the same time, I've got to assume... No, I won't assume. I mean, he probably wasn't allowed to have... We see it. We've seen it before in these cults. They're not allowed to have TVs. They're not allowed to have radios. Any outside influence. So he very well could have thought that what he was doing was right. Was just. Was everything his father was telling him it was. I don't know. It is so difficult because things are so different now, and obviously this was the 80s, but I mean, the last cult we did, I mean, was from the 2000s, so it's like that long ago, and you're still seeing this kind of manipulation and control, and I don't know. I just don't know. I just know from here on out it does not get better. So this is probably your warning that things are going to get really, really hard and difficult from this point out. Because people started doubting Dennis's father, and he began losing control. So what they were doubting, and I found this out later, but we'll talk about it more, but I'm going to briefly talk about it. They doubted the conversations with Yahweh and how the arm test didn't make sense and didn't... Okay, it didn't make sense. We'll leave it at that because it's true. So, his father tried to grab that control back, and he was controlling them even more. And he was clenching his fist tighter around them to try to control them. Literally his way or no way. I mean, that was what he was saying. So, to prove how tough he was, he decided to go after some non-believers, right? He was going to punish them in Yahweh's command. And he went after the weakest of the group. Okay, it does start getting harder here. And this isn't even the worst. But he takes this guy, and I have his name here in a minute. But he takes him to the hog shed and ties him up, chains him up, and then beats him, brutally beats him with a bat, with anything he can get his hands on, and beats him, and breaks both of his legs. But the father wasn't alone. There was Dennis and 2 other people. They were there. They were participants of this beatdown, right? And the father's telling them, this is, he is punishing them on Yahweh's command. This was because he doubted Yahweh, and he was a non-believer. So this was his punishment, and he was making a point to the whole group. Like I said, he's trying to get his fist tight around them to keep them from doubting him anymore. And Dennis says after his father, beat this guy, he was going to show Dennis how to skin a man alive. So he has Dennis go get razors and pliers, and they tortured this man all that afternoon. He said the guy, which I do know I don't remember his name, but I do have it later and to talk about, kept asking Yahweh's forgiveness, begging them to stop. Dennis, who is currently talking about this, is crying, which I don't care. He was a participant. I need to quit putting blush on. I'm putting on more blush aggressively because I'm so upset. So he is currently crying as he's retelling the story. And he says he thought it was too late for forgiveness. And I'm going to say, I agree. He had his chance. No, wait a minute. Dennis is saying that he thought this guy they were punishing, it was too late for forgiveness. That he had his chance at forgiveness prior, whatever, before being tortured. I doubt he actually had the opportunity to ask for forgiveness before being tortured. Either way, he didn't feel sorry for him at the time. Yeah, I'm really conflicted. I just I'm not a fan of Dennis's right now. He said this guy died while being tortured, which, thankfully, but I wish he would have died sooner instead of actually being skinned alive. And they buried him in their yard. I mean, just buried him. the dad told Dennis and the other guys who helped torture him that if anyone asked, they're just to tell him he left. He went down south somewhere. He was nowhere to be found. So the guy's name is James Tim. I guess it's Tim, T-H-I-M-M. And we learned that he was not the only one tortured. And if you have stayed, I'm just going to tell you now, this is awful. And this is awful, but when I get into it later and actually talk about what they did to this kid, it's okay. Dennis says that he's always wanted to please his father. From the time that his dad wanted him to be a starting catcher till now, when he was part of this group and tortured. They had just tortured this guy. He never questioned his father. He did whatever his father wanted him to do. And he didn't want to disappoint his father. So I'm just going to state, he says this a lot. A lot. And I don't know if he is trying to convince us, who, you know, he has to know that after telling what he's done so far, he doesn't have the public support. There's no way any of us can feel sorry for this guy. I'll take that back because I won't speak for everybody. There's no way I can feel sorry for this guy. So telling us over and over again, I think it's just his way of trying to justify what he has done. And it's kind of old. It's getting old. So they tortured James Tim. And then we learned that there was a 5-year-old boy who was also tortured and killed. And at this point, I know I'm going to struggle with the episode. And if I'm not mistaken, they don't mention a lot in the episode. I find out what happens when I do my research. But what we do know is the boy's name was Luke. Dennis said his father called him a mutt, a puppy, mixed breed. So he wasn't pure. He didn't deserve to live. And Dennis says, like I said, they don't talk about it a lot. I will find out more here shortly, but Dennis says that their last days were horrible. Absolutely horrible. So, about 2 months after the torture of James, Tim, I don't know about Luke, the boy. I don't know how long apart those two were. There was a couple of followers out and about, and they got arrested. And it doesn't say here why they got arrested. I do find this out and talk about it here in a minute. But they got arrested, and boy, it didn't take them long to start spilling the secrets of these Yahweh followers, right? They were telling them everything from the torture and killings and all the stealing. And next we see police footage of them raiding the farmhouse and and these guys being arrested, which I was like, I was cheering and clapping and couldn't have been happier. So, sorry. So as we are watching this news, the newscaster is talking about a grisly discovery where they found the burial site of Tim and digging him up, and that they talk about Michael Ryan, and I'm like, finally a name. It only took all this episode for me to get a name. But Michael Ryan and his teenage son Dennis having tortured the man to death. So the news, they know this, and the news is broadcasting it, right? So on September 25th, 1985, Michael Ryan was charged with the murders of James Tim and Luke Stice. And he was sentenced to death. Which, at that point, again, I'm just applauding. Hell yeah. Dennis said that for the first 6 months of his... Oh, hold on. Dennis was sentenced to life in prison for his role in James Tim's death. So I don't think, it never had any mention that he had anything to do with the little boy's death. Doesn't make me like him any better, but at least there's that. But he is sentenced to death, and obviously he's still not in jail. He is sitting in this house telling this story. So, yeah, something went wrong. So Dennis says that the first 6 months of his incarceration, the only person he was allowed to see was his dad. I don't get that. I don't understand what he said there. So maybe Michael told him the only person that he could talk to or see was him. That's probably more like it. But Michael told him that angels were coming and going to save them and get them out of prison, open the gates for them. They were going to carry on their work for Yahweh. And young Dennis believed him. Okay. 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 But he said he kept waiting and no angels ever showed up. So Dennis says now that prison actually saved his life. Okay. It was the only thing that got him away from his dad and his dad's influence. I can see that. Once contact had been broke, he was able to see what they did was not right. And it took him that long. He said being in prison was the only time he had been around a black guy. And in prison, everyone knew who he was. He said that this old black guy kept talking to him and telling him his father was wrong. And Dennis argued with him, but then this guy, he never told a name, but this guy would show him parts of the Bible that proved that his dad was wrong, and that the Bible was about love, not hate. And this old black fella, and I hate to keep saying that, but this old black guy showed him and made him start looking at things differently. It helped him start thinking that his father had been lying to him all these years. So once he realized that his father lied to him, he wanted to know why his father raised him that way. But his father wouldn't talk to him at that point. So when he started associating with this man of color, his dad had nothing to do with him because, he was Satan's people, and now his son was Satan, or Satan's followers. His dad wouldn't even acknowledge him anymore and disowned him. So, like I said, he was part of Satan's army, and he started thinking for himself. And he said the last time he talked to his father looked right at him and told him he was going to kill him and step right over him as he went to the next guy to kill them. And Dennis had no doubt he meant that. Okay, so I just went on and finished because this is going to get heavy. So, Michael Ryan died of cancer before he was executed. And Dennis says his mother moved to live with her sister and tried to get her life back together. He says he hated his mother when he went to prison. He hated her after he went to prison because she didn't save him from his father. And a counselor told him he needed to talk to his mother and express how he felt. So he called her and he told her he hated her, which I'm telling you would be every mother's worst nightmare after staying with an abusive, polygamist man just for your kids, right? I mean, he said, but after they talked, it started to repair their relationship, so I guess that's good. So, as I mentioned, Dennis, his life sentence was reduced on an appeal, and he was released from prison in 1997. He spent 11 years in prison, and he was 27 years old when he got out. So, he was pretty young. All this was going on. He was 16 when he killed that guy, and younger leading up to it. And he says he's never been a free person. He watched the actual news footage, or they showed us, and he was watching the actual news footage of people that were expressing how they think he should have never gotten out of prison, that he should have been should have had to honor his life sentence for killing somebody. And he says he wishes life would have been different. Well, no kidding. I mean, really? But if it had, he wouldn't have his son and his wife. So I guess he's looking at the positive side. He did this. He went to jail. He served his time. And now he's married and has a wife, which he, robbed a 5-year-old kid of ever having that, and another man. He swore he would never make his son do what he did, what he didn't want to do. And he would have his own choices. So he said that included church. He told his son he didn't know if he could ever go back to church because he didn't know if he believed in God, because he killed in God's name. But he was never going to take that option from his son. So if his son wanted to explore different religions, whatever, he would support that. So now we went online, and I'll tell you, Michael Ryan's a pretty common name, so it took me a little bit to find this information. So online I went, and from oxygen.com, there was an article titled, "What is the Yahweh? I don't know, it just went out of my head. What is the Yahweh cult? A sordid tale of slavery, torture, sodomy, and murder among farmers in Nebraska." So, hey, it's first mentioned that we're in Nebraska, and I don't know what to think about that. I mean, you start talking polygamy, and two of the cults we've done have been in Utah, so kind of just all associated it together, but we're in Nebraska. So we find out Michael Ryan was born in 1948, and he was a high school dropout. He had worked various jobs and as a truck driver until a back injury forced him to come on off the road. Feeling the financial pressure and pain from his back, he began using marijuana and started looking for spiritual strength. Unfortunately, he found it in a Christian identity movement that dubs, and I quote, "a unique, anti-Semitic, and racist theology that rose to a position of a commanding influence on the racist right in the 1980s, end quote. So now we're going to talk about this arm test. And when I was watching it, they were talking so fast and showing this movement, and I'm like, what are you doing? So this actually really explained it. And so the arm test is where Michael would hold a person's arm and shoulder out. So his arm would be out and hold the shoulder. And they would ask questions of Yahweh to learn the answers. If the answer was no, the arm would drop. If it was yes, the arm would stay up. So the person that was holding the arm and asking the questions had complete control over the other person's arm. And that was always Michael Ryan. So he always had control, and he himself was answering these yes or no questions, right? So it was very manipulated. And that's why some of the followers started questioning it. Because, I mean, common sense, guys, some point somebody in here has to have common sense. But Ryan used this arm test in his way to show his followers that he was talking to Yahweh himself and getting these answers. So in 1985, cult members James Tim and Rick Stice, who was the father of the 5-year-old Luke, made Michael angry when they expressed doubts of this arm test and talking to Yahweh. So according to court documents, both men were demoted to slaves and made to sleep outside, chained to a porch, and forced to do various awful things. Again, you've seen this up to here, but it doesn't get easier. So, warning. This was really, when I watched it, I almost turned it off and just decided we're going to skip this episode completely. But I didn't. Okay, so these men were forced to do various awful things to farm animals like goats and to each other. And Rick was forced to do unthinkable things to his 5-year-old son, Luke. And I'm not even going to mention what they are. You all get a good idea. You guys, I know you're smart enough. You know what he was forced to do to his 5-year-old son. And I believe wholeheartedly there's a special place in hell for Michael and all these followers. Michael also repeatedly abused the 5-year-old Luke, eventually killing little Luke after torturing him consistently. I will say, I didn't write it down, but I will tell you how Luke died. He was constantly abused by this, I think Michael was 6'5", 200 some plus pounds, and he abused this little Luke physically. And he died after being completely body slammed. I mean, picked up and thrown down, and then thrown into a cabinet where he was chained and locked up until he died. Okay. The men involved in Tim's death were his son Dennis, cult members Tim Haverkamp, James Haverkamp, and John Andreas. James and John were arrested for stealing from farm machinery, so they're the ones that were arrested and blew this whole thing open. And that resulted in the raid on the farm once they started squealing like pigs and telling everything that they were doing there. So they confessed everything. So during the raid, they found 150,000 rounds of ammunition and $250,000 worth of stolen property on the farm. James Haverkamp and John Andreas were sentenced to 26 years in prison for their part in the murders and thefts and whatnot. But they were released in 1998, so they weren't. So if this happened in what did I say, 85, and they got out in 98, they were supposed to serve for 26 years. So here's what I find funny, and I'd have to go back and look. In 1985, yes. Tim Haverkamp was sentenced to 10 years to life and released in 2009. So he served more time than the other two. So I don't know what he did that was different, but he served closer to 14 years, and the other two served. No, he served more than that. Anyways, I'm not good at math, okay? I'm not my daughter. Okay, in 2015, at the age of 66, Michael Ryan died of cancer, which was probably, I hope it was torture. I hope it was a long, drawn-out sickness. And I don't like to say things like that, but I really do. He was unrepentant all the way to the end, believing that he followed Yahweh's wishes and what he did was justified. So this is the very devastating story of Evil Lives Here, My Father the Prophet. Yeah, I mean, that was heavy. Very, very heavy. And, okay, so all these stories are heavy. I mean, they're talking about murder or some kind of sexual assault or something. So they're all heavy. But when you start talking about a 5-year-old kid, I mean, it just blows it out for me. I mean, it's just so sad. So sad. And because of this craptastic man's beliefs and force and the people that were following him, grown-ass men and women following him. And I guess that's where I have a hard time following her, understanding, and I don't get it. I don't get it, which is why I think doing a cult series might be good for me, because I don't understand how somebody can completely get rid of everything they know and learn and are raised to follow one particular person. So let me know. Is that something you want to know too? It just, the more I do these, on cults, the more and I actually try to stay away from the cult aspect of this, because there was, the name of this cult was like the Rulon cult or the Rulon people. I don't know. I saw it and I purposely stayed away from it this story itself was so devastating. I wanted to make sure that we understood what they were doing and what happened to this poor little kid and man, and didn't focus too much on cults. But if we decide to do a cult episode, or do like get ready with me and discuss some cults, I might go back to it. I don't know. This was a devastating one. I don't know if I can. Anyways, if you were able to stay through this, God bless you. I mean, literally, I almost couldn't do it, and I was the one sharing this, right? So, yeah, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your comments. Like, share the video, please. And I hope you hit that subscribe button, guys. That really means the world to me. I'm trying to build this into something where we can all really enjoy this, because these episodes are quite amazing. You get a little bit of everything. And I just want all of us to be, I don't know. I might try my next episode just sitting and talking to you, already having my makeup done, because it is a little distracting when I do that. But I enjoy the makeup part, so maybe the get ready with me on cults will give me the makeup part of it. I don't know. I'm open to all suggestions, all thoughts. Please be kind. And until next time, guys, be safe out there. Enjoy this beautiful weather, and goodbye.